Bongo Bongo, a dark and mysterious entity within the Zelda lore of Ocarina of Time. It's known this being was sealed away within the bottom of the well and later was freed, only to return to a nearby place, the Shadow Temple. Why did it return there? We know that Bongo Bongo was once a person, and it's highly implied as well as theorized on Reddit and across YouTube that it was once a Sheikah or interloper who betrayed the royal family and was captured. But how did Bongo Bongo die exactly? That is, how did it become the way that it is when you, I, or Link first encounter it? Let's dive into the quantum realm and take a closer look at why. Here lies Hyrule's bloodied history of greed and hatred, a line that's burned into our memories of playing Ocarina of Time growing up, and one that's certainly left many questions about the purpose of the Shadow Temple. To seek any kind of reasonable answers to Bongo Bongo's demise is to first know and understand this dark entity's home, the Shadow Temple. The Shadow Temple is the literal manifestation of Dead Men Tell No Tales. It's effectively a secret underground network of tunnels filled to the brim with deadly blade traps, cells, mass grave sites, torture devices, as well as statues of rats and geese, creatures often associated with death and disease. According to the lore of The Legend of Zelda, the Shadow Temple served as a place where the members of the Sheikah tribe brought captured enemies of the royal family of Hyrule to be tortured for information or executed for their transgressions, maybe even silenced. Who knows? Due to the inherently dark nature of this practice during wartime, it was an occurrence viewed as a stain on the history of Hyrule, and the Sheikah kept this area sealed away lest anyone get word of what occurred. Where prisoners were kept is fairly obvious. The cells of this dark, murky dungeon stand out amongst the gritty walls and pale blades. The most curious thing about these cells isn't just where they are located, but why there isn't exactly any doors on the cells.
It's entirely possible that the doors have been made of wood and simply rotted away. But looking around the temple walls nearby, we can see wooden support beams still stand or exist with no signs of rot whatsoever. No, it might just be too easy seeing it that way, even if it makes sense initially. There's a more likely reason. The Sheikahs never needed them to keep the prisoners bound or confined with a locked door. The pure psychology of the prison cell room is truly diabolical when broken down. You have cells in which prisoners will be placed in with no doors because the spike traps above them would have killed them the moment they ever tried to escape. Additionally, the spike traps fall rhythmically, one after the other. A constant, torturesome reminder of death should they try to escape. A constant threat, always looming above, but kept just far away enough at the cell entrance so that prisoners wouldn't perish immediately. Prisoners probably wouldn't have been kept in bonds even. The fear of death from above alone would likely have kept any fleeting fears in check. Worse yet, it might even drive some mad enough to stick their head out and try running for it. Damned if you try, and damned if you don't. The psychological harm of sitting here always, with your sense of free agency being slowly trained to be a falsity, trying desperately to cling on to hope. The idea that escape may be possible, and you still have a choice to flee, only to be insulted with a door wide open and death falling from above. This room is horrifying. In the real world we live in, a similar form of torture has even been used. Whether this inspired the creation of this area is one question far too speculative to answer here. However, historically, dating back to the 15th century and further, a horrific form of psychological torture known as Chinese water torture was performed. This method was even documented during the Spanish Inquisition and in other areas and places across Europe in the Middle Ages. Link in the upper right corner if you want to learn more about those fun periods in history. Anyways, This method involved typically keeping the victim held, while a slow, irregular drip of cold water struck the scalp repeatedly. Often the victim was primed to be convinced it was also laced with a poison. The fear of constantly not knowing and being unable to control or do anything about these droplets, or worrying about your health, slowly but surely causes fear and mental deterioration in the unfortunate subject. Anxiety usually sets in over time as the droplets fall irregularly and are anticipated. Other forms of grisly torture methods dating further than the Spanish Inquisition similarly do exist. Waterboarding is a method that predates the Spanish Inquisition's formation in 1487. It involves simulated failed drowning, using a rag in a mouth's victim and water being slowly poured into it, causing the rag to absorb it, and of course, obstruct the victim's airways, simulating drowning in a very terrifying and uncomfortable manner. Eventually, this leaves the victim slowly deteriorating from stress and a loss of agency over their own safety. Something I'm certain these poor folks in the cells of the Shadow Temple felt, sitting beneath the spike traps, experiencing them as the symphony of death beating upon the cell roofs and floor.
Truly, it's a certainty these captives held here passed away under heavily traumatic circumstances, and the torturesome methods of the cells and the constant sounds of the thudding spike traps above speaks volumes to how sinister the Sheikah's methods of dealing with the enemies of the royal family were. It does beg the question if the royal family ever knew of this place and the extent the Sheikah went. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if this is a case of going too far and trying to keep it quiet after realizing the error of your ways. Do the ends justify the means? Just how long did the Sheikah continue these acts before they asked these questions? In the end, we may never have that answer, but certainly does it leave much open to speculate upon.
This supposition of Bongo Bongo as a Sheikah or an interloper in this exploration of the unknown is at best a side note or distraction. The glaring thing we all see, however, is that it was once a living person. Even after being transformed, it had humanoid features. And if you think this doesn't tell a story, you'd be as wrong as the Sheikah were for believing they could bury their mistakes forever.
Bongo's original body and identity truly has been ravaged and buried away. To know the story of this dark spiritual entity's past living self in its final moments is to first acknowledge it truly was once a singular person, to empathize and admit it was once a thinking, feeling, living being like all the rest of Hyrule's inhabitants. It's with a high degree of certainty, not absolute certainty, but a very strong suspicion after observing Bongo with the lens of empathy. The circumstances of this individual was by far the worst of any who had been to the temple. It wasn't like all the rest who sat in fear and passed eventually at the guillotine swiftly. No, truly the devil is in the details. Allow me to begin this by turning our attention to the rat statues above the cells. Chains hang from the ceiling placed in line with the hands of each rat statue. The oxidized, rusty appearance indicates these chains could have been handled quite frequently. Perhaps during the period Bongo was a living person, he was kept in the cell block above. If that's the case, he would have been constantly watching folks he knew displayed on the chains, alive, fearing for their lives as the blade traps would rise and fall. Just a hair's breadth away, all of this happening right before the eyes that could see the truth. Until one day, viewers, it was Bongo's turn to be hung upside down and tortured for information. Perhaps Bongo was a high-value captive with tiresome information that could have turned the tide of the wars prior to Ocarina of Time. So desperate were the Sheikah to get this information and end it perhaps. Maybe they resorted to breaking from the normal routine. Perhaps it started with having Bongo upside down on the chains, hanging with his arms touching the ground, blood rushing and head pounding and hands swelling. The emotional and physical stress grew. The Sheikah, desperate for information, started to swing Bongo Bongo on the chains, bit by bit, closer and closer, eventually resorting to holding him at the edge and... The circumstances of Bongo's living self and its horrific demise and transformation into the phantom shadow beast is as tragic and horrific as it is humbling. No singular person, group, or tribe across history is without fault, nor without successes and failures, and the Sheikah are no different. The wool we cast over the eyes we see through may seem black and white, but in closer truth, be layered in shadows of grey. In a world ever-changing and always growing, history may not repeat itself, but certainly can it rhyme when we fail to observe, listen, and learn. When we listen to Bongo Bongo's beat of the colossal drum Link stands upon in the boss arena, it haunts me to realize that Bongo isn't just performing the deaf drums played before someone's passing. Bongo Bongo is making an unregistered and unheard cry for help. This drum beat is the last thing Bongo held onto in its final living moments. The rhythmic rising and falling of the blade traps from above. A literal beat of death. Thud, rising, thud, falling. The trauma Bongo's spirit carried that causes it and the other spirits of those also tortured by the same death beat that joined with Bongo to formulate the dark entity, played out on a drum with no hope of ever being heard or understood. It's the fact this place has a strong connection to this dark spirit's trauma that single-handedly caused this being to return, even after breaking free. All it knew was pain, darkness, and fear. That is, until its mindless suffering was laid to rest by Link some many years later. Hey everyone, Thinkafurr here. Just wanted to say a few things real quick before we get into the usual promos. Special thank yous to Dr. Wily for joining me in today's video. This project was a two-part collab, link in the top right if you want to go watch it. Thinkers, if you enjoyed this video, let me know your thoughts in the comments below and hit that like button and subscribe. If you want to support the channel's content monetarily, you can join as a member on Patreon or join on YouTube. Both will get your name in the credits and behind the scenes access. Now before I head out, be sure to share some of that love and support around at my partner's Instagram at ElfSpringArt. Additionally, Elfie is now open for commissions publicly, so if you want something created, again, head down to their Instagram page. Give them a follow. Love ya, Elfie. Thinkers, have a big-brained, thonky day, and be sure to think safe out there. Bye-bye.